We've heard a lot today about how, when, and where to seek education and advice. So today we're going to make that topic the panel of this discussion. So financial advice can mean many things to different people. And a financial advisor is just one place you can go to get this kind of education. So we're going to hear from Alex and Brian today as they discuss, are financial advisors worth it? So Brian, I'm going to kick it over to you. Everyone knows you as the options guy at Ally, but what I don't think they know is a little bit about your background or your money story. So why don't you start us out with that?
I'm happy to do that. Except for my money story isn't quite as exciting as a lot of them that we've heard today. There's been some just wonderful trials and tribulations to get to where they are. And I think a lot of people have that path. My path a little bit, I came from a family of teachers in a small town. And so in that small town, it was a town of 2,000 people in northern Wisconsin. I had a couple uncles that were teachers. My brother, my only brother, is a teacher. My father was the baseball and basketball coach also in my little high school where we were at. So when we were growing up, it was not really about money. It was about sports. And that was the topic of conversation. But one of the biggest things about being a teacher is you're in it usually for the long haul, because there's not a lot of talk around the money scenario, because there's just not a lot of money, but there is one heck of a pension if you can make it all the way to the end. And that is one thing that my family always was looking forward to as far as their retirement, is that pension. And my father has done okay with that. We never had a lot of money overall growing up, but I never really had the financial background when I went off to college to try to figure out, well, once I start making money, what do I do with that money? And my degree is in math, which was a little different than a lot of other people in my family. And because of that, I really never took on debt. I think that's why. I don't know exactly why. So I still remember in my money story, my angst when I actually bought a new vehicle and I took out a car loan. I really struggled with that. And I really had buyer's remorse. A month or two went by and I really wanted to return it. I wanted to take the receipt back to the dealer just because I had to make that first car payment. And that just made me really nervous overall. And I still remember that type of feeling. And that has led me through my whole life. So I really just don't have a lot of debt. I never took on credit card debt. And, I've taken a few risks. We started a little company that actually got bought out by Ally, which was called Trade King overall. Now, you don't always talk about the people that have tried things that are a little risky. And I'm not risk adverse. I don't mind, obviously, as an option trader, managing risk and using my mind to try to outperform what the market is doing overall, just coming up with interesting scenarios. And that's really kind of been my money story and where that has came from. And you don't hear a ton about people that have started companies and kind of make it, right? That don't necessarily knock it out of the park. But one of the things about starting a company is there is a lot of risk and a lot of reward. And we're going to be talking to Alex a little bit about that. So it'll kind of segue into where Alex came from and what Alex has done overall. But there is a lot of angst also. A lot of people that will start up companies, usually the first or second time, just don't make it overall and, just get back on the horse again. And we've had a lot of great people on the show all day long that have talked about taking risks and when they work out and when they don't, what you have to do to continue on and persevere overall. So besides that little risk in my life, I basically worked for a lot of companies and I've always done fairly well in what I have done. So my money story is I don't like debt. I think that would sum it up overall, Nicole.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for that, Brian. I find it fascinating that you come from a long line of teachers and you yourself are a teacher, but just a financial education, right, around options. And you and I are going to have a talk about how you don't consider yourself risk averse, but you love options. I'm fascinated by that, but that's for a later time. Mm-hmm. So Alex, would love to hear from you of what's your money story and how did you come to be the financial advisor that you are?
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for inviting me here. My name is Alex Chalekian again. I'm a financial advisor who's been helping people grow their wealth for the last 23 years. A lot of this came about when I was out of high school, and I'm myself and my brother are first generation born here in the United States. My parents, grandparents all immigrated here, and I watched them over the years struggle. They were very hard workers. My parents, my grandparents, my grandfather ran a restaurant for many, many years, and no one ever taught him how to save, what to do. He
Mhm.
constantly would grow the business, put the money back into it. And then we here in Los Angeles had a big earthquake in 94 that demolished the restaurant. And it was devastating for him. He was already at an age where, it was time for him to retire. He had nothing really to show for it. So that kind of sparked me to learn and to understand about savings, budgeting, investing, helping other people like my family members and my friends. And that's what got me into the industry. But even then, I was trying to learn more for myself, more as an educational, but I fell in love with it and decided to make a career out of it.
I think it's really fascinating, Alex, that your story is a first generation American and seeing your family kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps probably resonates with a lot of our viewers out there, and just the resiliency of it all. So, and to me, it's always fascinating how people kind of come to where they are. So we're going to have a poll for you. If you go to ally.com/live poll, the poll question is, have you or would you ever use a financial advisor? So while the folks are putting that information in, I'm going to ask first, Alex, for those of us who maybe don't know what financial advisors do, what does a financial advisor do?
Well, financial advisors have a lot of different roles, especially when we're talking about financial planning. I mean, an easy way to look at this is having someone that's going to help you along the way, coach you along the way, and train you. So, the three main things that I would say financial advisors bring to the table is their knowledge, experience, right? So, we work with a lot of our clients in helping educate them. That's a very important thing for me, making sure they understand what they're doing and they're knowledgeable about the situation. But that experience that I've had for the last 23 years helps me and educate them. I've seen a lot of bull markets, I've seen a lot of crashes. And sometimes when investors, for example, that are watching this are new to the markets, they don't really understand, they don't really know, they haven't had that experience. So we can bring a lot of that to the table. We also are going to help you with time, saving time. A lot of times clients will hire us or want to work with an advisor for the mere fact that it's better for them to focus on other things that they're doing. Whether they have busy lives or they have busy careers or family, and they don't want to necessarily worry about, do I have to learn the new tax laws, the state laws, the new rules, the markets, all of that. They will rather focus on their time and put that time and effort elsewhere. And then lastly, we help our clients with not making costly mistakes, right? Sometimes you're your own worst enemy and people like to shoot themselves in the foot. Unfortunately, with investing, especially if you're new, you can get some experience and learn from that. But we're here to help with that. Vanguard did a recent study where they found that those working with advisors were able to get up to about 3% net on an annual basis more than had they done it for themselves. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And we can go through that as well.
So, three things I heard from that is education, helping people get back time, which is, I think, the most precious of resources, and avoiding mistakes. So, before I ask the follow up question to that, Alex, I just wanted to take a look at our results of our poll. So, it looks like a large percentage of you, over 60-ish% of you, actually are working with a financial advisor. We have some folks out there that said maybe there's a little trepidation, and we had about 15% that said no. Um, so I guess, understanding what do you do, I guess my follow-up question to you, Alex, is, so how do you typically do that? How do you educate? How do you help people get back the precious resource of time? And how do you help them avoid making mistakes?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways of how we could do that. One of them is through comprehensive financial planning. We spend the time with our clients And every advisor is a little bit different, right? But we want to sit there and find out and ask the questions, what are your goals, whether they be long-term, short-term, in between? And in a scenario where, for example, there's a couple, they've never had this conversation. You asked me about my money story, and we asked them about their money story. We want to know what money means to them. We want to know, have they had the conversation? Most of the times, a couple will come into our office, or more virtually these days, and they've never actually talked about money. And now they're going to be combining their finances, whether it be for the first time, if they just recently got married, or they're working separately. So we ask the right questions. We guide them through that. We help them with the discipline as well, trying to figure out what those strategies are, whether it be figuring out some cost-effective investments, helping them with behavioral coaching, asset allocation, helping them create a budget, some spending strategies. And a lot of times, and maybe we'll talk about this with Brian as well, a lot of investors will come in, they don't even know what their risk tolerance is, right? This might be their first time. So we'll try to identify what their risk tolerance is, as well as figure out what their buy and sell discipline is. Most investors, they might love to buy something, a stock, but they have no idea when to sell it. And we have to have those types of conversations with them.
So it seems like you're doing a lot to take a lot of the work off of the advisor, or the client's plate or the investor's plate. So Brian, we did see that some folks that are like thinking about using an advisor or we're not using an advisor. So they might want to do it themselves or be self-directed and go out do it their own. So from your perspective, what does it take to be an effective DIY investor?
Discipline, more than you ever can imagine with DIY investors. Now, I personally have been teaching options in general, that topic, just option trading overall, to go along with stock trading and investing in ETFs and mutual funds. But my main focus has always been options. And the only traders that make it are people that can take that approach in a very disciplined way, in that you're going to set up a plan. You're going to, when that plan happens, you act overall. And especially in option trading. Now, you talked about a little bit about being risk adverse and being an option trader overall. There's many ways that you can use options to actually enhance your portfolio above and beyond any potential dividends a stock might pay overall. And that's what I really focus on in a lot of my teachings as far as options are concerned. But one of the biggest things, if you're going to be, you're going to take the reins by yourself, is you got to put the research in. We talked a little bit about my money history. One of the biggest things that I always recalled when I was growing up is a lot of my parents would never actually seek out a financial advisor. And honestly, they needed it. Why? Because they wouldn't put the time in. We were so busy in activities and everything else that we did that was always a second fiddle overall. My parents are fine. They did okay, mainly because of that was back in the day of the pension, and the pension didn't run dry, which was a major concern, coming into this new decade overall, is what are happening with these pensions and what are happening with these funds. So that's my biggest thing. If you are going to be on your own, is to know I need to set up a plan. I need to come up with a plan, and then I need to stick to that plan. And there's still some things out there like estate planning where you really do need another pair of eyes. And then lastly, my biggest thing is find like people. Find them. Go out to YouTube like you are right now, and find different groups that are like-minded and be able to toss some ideas off of those type of people. I think that's very important. The options trading world is very small overall, and people like to talk to one another. So seek those type of people out overall.
I love that, Brian. I love the thought of seeking a community to educate yourself. And as we heard on our prior, some of our prior panels, was really kind of find your tribe, right? So it sounds to me like finding your tribe in the DIY world is really important. So Ally, we have a slide here to kind of talk a little bit about. Ally went out and did a survey on when do people think it makes sense to bring in a financial advisor? And surprisingly, a lot of people said it really dealt with your net worth. And so, on average, people are thinking that it's that 250 to 500,000 is when you really need to start seeking advice from an outside source. So my question is to you, Alex, when is a person, like when you see your clients coming into your office, like what are the indicators that they are ready to seek your advice? Alex, we can't hear you.
I apologize for that.
No worries.
It wouldn't be live if we didn't have an issue with the mic.
That's
right. So I'm so glad you guys shared this slide over here. It's a problem within our industry, and it's a problem where the financial industry, it unfortunately tries to make people fall into different classes, and where you'll talk to an advisor, well, they'll say, well, I'm sorry, you don't qualify to work with us, whether that be an asset minimum or a revenue minimum or whatever the problem may be. And that over the years has made people think that, oh, I shouldn't be working with an advisor, or they're intimidated to ask. I'll tell you, we don't have any minimums here at our firm. I pride myself, back to my money story of trying to help anyone and everyone. And I ask for one thing, that you're willing to learn. So if you're willing to learn, there's going to be advisors like myself and others that are out there that'll be more than happy to work with you and help you out. So they want to educate you. And for example, most of the times, unfortunately, financial advisors will have these minimums. So if you're, let's say, in debt and you need to figure out how to get out of debt, they might not be able to talk to you, but there are advisors that will. They can help you and come up with a strategy, or they can help you in building a budget, or they can help you plan for college education, or whatever it may be, whatever goals you have. So you need to find someone that can help and figure out what your goals are, and is not trying to sell you a product, is not trying to focus on coming up with something on the back end, but can give you good advice and coach you along with whatever you want. But you have to go in there and be willing to learn. If you go in with the attitude of saying, oh, I already know, or I don't need to get information from you, then it's not going to really work, because this is a long-term relationship that you're building with this advisor.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of things of why individuals would come to you to seek advice. And so I'm thankful that you just didn't focus it on the dollar value. I think that's a big misnomer in our industry. So if you think about, you mentioned some of the goals of like college savings, paying off debt. What are some of the concerns that you typically see then from your clients as they come in to sit down with you?
I think you have it right here on the slide. There's a lot of the stuff, whether they're going to be okay. That's one of the biggest questions that our clients want to find out. Will we be okay? Will our family be okay? Will I be able to leave a legacy? Will I be able to retire on time? What will happen to me if I lose my job? What will happen to me if I don't have enough for an emergency? Where will I be able to access these things? So everyone's story is a little bit different. So we have to make sure we're not using a cookie cutter approach, right, Nicole? And that you can basically customize a financial plan for them. So these are some of the goals and concerns most of the times people ask, but there's some other ones too that are a little bit more nuanced, and you try to make sure that you can figure out a strategy to help your clients reach them.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. It's important to understand, I think, for a lot of our audience that may be looking at using an advisor or have not used an advisor, that they can be there for just more than your portfolio management, right? They're there to help you with your whole financial health.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, it's important because I know we're talking about wealth here, and wealth is created in so many different ways. It's not just always about money. So you want to find out, when we're talking to a client, what does that wealth mean to them? For me, it means time, it means my family, it means health. So it's a lot different, and investments are just a tool to help you get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, we talked, Brian, you mentioned earlier that while, it's important to find your tribe and get comfortable with investing, especially if you're a DIY, but you need to surround yourselves with some other professionals. Estate planning is one thing that you mentioned. So is it safe for me to assume that you believe that a person can incorporate both strategies of DIY as well as seeking out advice of an advisor?
Without a doubt. And I think that is the more common path that most people take. I mean, one of the things, like you asked the question, can I retire? I don't know how you can answer that question without talking to somebody about what type of money it takes to retire. Unless you know it on your own, what that magical number is, and you can just come up with that by doing all the accounting, doing all the background. And that's just a real hard thing to do without being willing to have a discussion. And in the olden days, a lot of people just weren't comfortable talking about a nest egg, talking about that type of money overall. Now, I think that there is definitely a place where if you are willing to start and all of a sudden it piques your interest and you find yourself listening to more financial podcasts than you are watching sitcoms, well, maybe doing some DIY investing is there for you. And that's really where I am at. I prefer to just learn about the markets, watch the markets, see what's happening in the marketplace overall. And because of that, that's when I started with my math background. I kind of was led into the options marketplace. And then I started doing it on my own. And then you start small. Actually, in some of my investing, I actually said to myself at one point in time, I am not doing enough of it on my own. And part of the reason why was, honestly, I should have had more months where I was having more losses overall. And because I wasn't taking I wasn't receiving those losses, I was actually losing some more upside potential. So you dip your toe in the water, see if you have the ability to follow through on your plan. See if you will put that time in. But overall, most people, and myself included, have some type of financial money manager overall, especially as retirement approaches. But I do love the concept of mixing both of them, deciding this is what I want to do with my money and my own environment, and then also seeking help from a professional from time to time.
Yeah, it's interesting you would say that, Brian. I too, I'm in the industry and I too have a financial advisor that I use. And people always ask, like my friends and family, like, why do you use a financial advisor? Like you are one. And I always tell them it's cheaper than a divorce attorney because it's important to have that third party there to kind of guide you through some of those difficult conversations. If you think about your relationships, some of the most heated arguments that couples have are over finances. So it's always good to just have that third party there that will help you navigate those conversations. So, Alex, I'm going to throw that question to you as well. Like when you have clients coming in that want to do a little bit of both, right? They want to have some assets they're managing on their own, and they also seek the advice and want you to manage some of their assets. How do you help them balance that?
Before I answer that question, we do a lot more therapy, I would say, and couples counseling than money management. This is part of our role. And, going back to what I said, a lot of times couples either haven't had this conversation or it becomes a heated issue. And it is a lot cheaper than a divorce. I promise you. Okay. So to answer your question, I think people should have a little bit of both. I'm not the believer that's going to say everyone has to work with an advisor. No, there is those that want to do it themselves, and I applaud that. I just want to make sure they get the information correctly and from good resources. Getting investment advice from TikTok talking about Tesla YOLO options is probably not the best place to go, right? I know Brian deals with options, so maybe he might disagree with me on that one. But my point is, a lot of these people that are giving you advice are not necessarily licensed, don't really have experience. They're figuring it out themselves, and that's fine as well. But just be careful of where you get that information. That's one of the reasons why we're actually launching a financial well-being platform called FutureVest, because I do want to provide good experience, education, and so forth. So if people are interested to go and learn more about that and sign up, they can go to futurevest.com and sign up. So that hasn't launched just yet, but they could be first on the list. But we do help balance, because we will have clients that will come in and for lack of a better word, they say, I want to have some gambling money, right? And I do want to be able to buy and sell stuff to get take care of that itch that I have. And we will siphon off a small portion, just like I would tell them, whatever you think you can afford to lose on the blackjack table, this is what you can do in there. And you know what? If you want to trade options, if you want to buy and sell stocks, whatever it may be, do it to your heart content. But as long as that doesn't affect your overall financial plan, know that whatever's in there, you might lose 100% of it. And if it doesn't take us off track, then no problem. So I'm okay with them having that balance, because even I like to do my own more aggressive investing. So I understand that. So I think it's good to be able to do both. But you need to work with an advisor that's going to be comfortable with that. Not all advisors are comfortable with that.
Yeah. So futurevest.com is your education site.
Yeah.
That's a great place to start, right? Is education. Oftentimes we hear from our clients at Ally about, the use. We survey a lot about the use of, would they use an advisor? How would they use an advisor? One thing that comes up a lot is fees. There's a lot of, I think, misnomers or misinformation out there around, fees that advisors charge, and are they worth it? Are they not worth it? So let's talk about them. So Alex, we always hear that fees is just, the value of a service is in the eye of that beholder who's paying that fee. So what value does an advisor bring to the client relationship?
So we've talked a lot about this. A lot of the stuff that we do is to bring value, right? For example, if you want to look at it to the nitty gritty, if we are working with a client and we're helping them in overall tax planning strategy, if I can help clients save thousands of dollars in tax planning, or hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years for their estate, that's something that you could bring value to, even if you're charging, I don't know, a couple $1,000s to do a financial plan, or maybe you're charging on managing the assets, whatever that may be. So there's the value there. It's very hard, and the industry is changing for the better, where fees are starting to come down. And I really, truly appreciate that. You're starting to see that asset management and money management costs are coming down. And that's where you're going to differentiate, where is an advisor really making their earning or living in managing those assets, or giving you good advice, right? So if you're getting the advice and there was a value that they're bringing to the table, hopefully they can show that to you. And it might not be something that you're going to see right away, but when you sit down with a client, I can show them with using specific tools or placing assets in different buckets as opposed to what they wanted to do over the long term, let's say 10, 20, 30 years with compounding, that can make hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference. So how do you value that? It's very tough, right? So in this marketplace that we're in, we have to show the clients what the value is, what we bring to the table, and hopefully they can see that and recognize that the relationship is worthwhile. It's got to make sense for both parties.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So don't forget, we will have a Q&A. So if you have some questions, leave them down in the chat box. I'm going to have two final questions before we look to what our listeners are asking. So Brian, this question is for you. With all the excitement around meme stocks and the increase of financial influencers and education really at our fingertips, how do you see that self-directed DIY investor evolving?
Well, first of all, I would consider myself a professional in the financial space, and I do want to go out there and talk about GameStops or some of those meme stops, as I throw in GameStop with that, which would happen to be up 20% today overall. For some reason, I saw that little alert this morning. But with that being said, they came up with a plan, and they actually forced their will upon the marketplace overall. And they did succeed. Many people might have lost money along the way, but there were a lot of people that made money while they were doing it. Now, here's my biggest concern, and this is out of all my years, especially in the options world, seeing people that would just use their money to speculate overall. Very rarely do they not double down. where they actually come in, make their first investment and do extremely well on that investment, maybe speculating on options, maybe using way out of the money calls, way out of the money puts overall. And then after they have their first loss, just being able to realize and mitigate that risk. And that's one of the things that I always come back as with anybody that I'm teaching options to overall is the hardest trade to make. And sometimes the best trade, I have a lot of situations in my life where I would say the best trade I ever made was I actually sold an underlying stock or got out of an option position that was losing. And I got out when I said I would. And because of that, I didn't lose more. And that type of discipline. And that's what concerns me about the meme stocks overall is I think, yes, you guys executed on a plan. You did a short squeeze. We had that situation. It became more than just about the short squeeze overall. But now that you've had that success, if you've had success, if you were part of that wave of driving up some of these stocks, what's your plan next? And that is where don't be scared to seek some advice. Don't be scared to not just talk on the financial forums. Talk to a professional. You have in some ways. Well, I don't want to say get lucky because I feel like that they've been talked down to a lot because of that plan overall. You had a profitable situation. Now let's go back and see, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? How are we going to approach this we got our toe in the water. Let's go do something about it. And, as an option trader, I've seen a lot of people do that. And then before you know it, the money was all gone just because they couldn't prevent themselves from the thrill of the fact that they were making money quickly.
Yeah, so it sounds like education is pivotal there, right?
Yeah,
like the
really
continued
does.
Education is probably going to be a trend we'll see, not to live in YOLO land. So Alex, for you, so you'd mentioned a couple of things that you're more of like a couples therapist at times. So how do you see that relationship between an advisor and a client changing?
It's going to go into more of a hybrid mode. Given what I was just mentioning about having a platform where they could educate themselves, learn. So we're going to be able to provide a lot of that in a more mass manner. It's hard right now. If you think about a traditional advisor is going to be able to possibly manage 100, 150 actual relationships where they're sitting down with the individual or the individuals and giving them an hour of their time and going over the plans and making sure they're on track and giving one-on-one attention. So you kind of max out on that. But you can also see when you're able to provide a platform, like I mentioned with FutureVest, we can do that on a bigger scale where we can have videos, content, educational courses, other things that we can provide to them. They could do on their own. Maybe they want to do that at 11 o'clock at night on their iPad before they go to bed. And if it's easy for them to be able to do that, and they can track their progress. They could track their planning. They could be able to engage and learn more. And I think that's how we're going to evolve. You're going to have to see the industry be able to offer the solutions on a mass manner. And then if someone wants more one-on-one, be able to reach out to a professional like ourselves and be able to do that.
Yeah, so it's the democratization and digitization of the financial industry. So I love that. Well, we've got some great questions for you, gentlemen, in the Q&A box. So we have two that are really of the similar vein, and they're around how do we find a trusted advisor that's right for you, or one with like a family-centric mindset. So Alex, I think that's a perfect one for you to answer.
Whether you want to try to do a search online, I highly, highly recommend you interview at least 2 or 3 different financial advisors and be very careful, because the financial advisor tagline or people call themselves that could be for different things, whether you're basically selling insurance or you have different ways of getting compensated or sell different products. people throw everyone and lump themselves as an advisor as a title. So be very careful of that. That's why I think it's important that you interview different people. This is a longer term relationship. You need to find out if you want someone that is more family centric, talk to them. I think it's important that you interview the advisor, ask them the questions. How do they get compensated? What's important to them? How do they work with their clients? What's the expectations? How often will they communicate with you? So there's a whole list of questions. You can find them online traditionally and interview the advisor. And then you and your, whether it be your spouse or if it's just for yourself, will decide and go and choose who you want to work with.
That's great. So now there's another question out there, and this one is for you, Brian. This comes from David Timbers. How can a viewer determine if a robo account or a financial advisor is right for their situation?
Well, overall, when I look at robo accounts relative to financial advisors, I do think that there's a room in a portfolio for both of them. The biggest thing about a robo account is you got to be very comfortable with being online. If your comfort level, if you're watching this YouTube video right now, you probably do have a little bit of a comfort just going out and seeking different robo advisors in general. You're willing to go online, sign in, answer financial questions online, and willing to accept the answers that you get back. So that's one of the biggest things about a robo account versus a financial advisor is obviously the personal touch. And in this day and age, people that have grown up with YouTube and the millennial generation overall has proven that they've felt they like less interaction as opposed to more, and that's where a robo advisor really seems to help out. Now, I personally, once again, feel like if you're going to be doing that situation, you want to look for your tribe, and I'm going to steal that phrase because I think that's a wonderful phrase for it. And you need to be able to still talk with people because one of the things that I feel like if you're just going in and you pick one robo advisor and you're just in your own little silo, there might be opportunities that you could be missing out on. You might not be reaching goals that other people are and you're just not aware of. And also just different investment vehicles that you can look towards. So once again, I feel like I like the combination of a robo advisor and a real advisor overall. But the biggest thing, obviously, my parents would have never went to a robo advisor. They just would have never felt comfortable with it, with just getting all of their information from digitized text overall.
So what I'm hearing you say is that it could be high tech, but it has to be right touch, right? Like if you're looking for that personal information, like you have to determine what's the right touch for you, and whether or not you want to go high tech with that.
And I'd throw in, you need to track, you need to set benchmarks, you need to see what's going on in the rest of the marketplace. Just don't go in and invest once again and just let it ride in that scenario. And especially, I think that is true with robo advisors.
Yeah. We had Sadie Harrison asked a question that I think it's probably in a lot of people's minds, considering too how our survey was responded. So her question is, can I still work with an advisor if I don't have a ton of money? So Alex, I'll throw that one to you.
Again, yes, you can. You have to find the right advisor. There's a lot of different advisors like myself that don't necessarily have asset minimums, and they're more here to help as much as they possibly can. And there's advisors that focus a lot on helping those that don't have a lot of assets or are in debt, or maybe they have a lot of school loans or whatever it may be. There's a lot of those types of advisors. So you have to find them. And I think during your interview process, or even if you're calling around through the search, find out if they work with someone like yourself, or find out if they have account minimums or asset minimums or revenue minimums, and just identify off the bat so you don't have to even waste your time spending an hour with them and getting into wrapped up into some sort of a meeting that was not necessary.
So how can people start that research? Where are some sites that they can go to, Alex, to start that research on finding an advisor in their area?
So I get a ton of calls and emails just from people that do online searches on Google. They can find a lot of that there, looking for a local advisor, whatever it may be. Another place I would highly recommend is if you can go to a blog I'm a part of. It's learn.altruist.com. You can learn a lot about finances. You can find other advisors and so forth. They're building all of that out where there could be matchmaking down the line. So that's another place I would highly recommend people go to subscribe.
Thank you. And our last question for the day, it's playing upon that matchmaking theme. So we heard from Greg. He says, I want to work with a financial advisor to pursue my financial goals, but my spouse is not interested. How do we start the compromise?
Yeah, I'm assuming I'm going to take that one. So I think it's important to have the conversation. Now, I mean, we can't force your spouse to come to a meeting or to the initial consultation, but I found that I would say almost like 50% of the time, one of the spouses is not comfortable with the relationship or didn't really want to be a part of the meeting. And I think it's up to the advisor to make sure that they understand how important it is that they're a part of this, and to also be able to show the value that they can bring in the relationship. A lot of times you don't know what you don't know, right? People will come to these meetings and they think it's going to be a sales presentation. They think they're going into a car dealership and they're going to be sold something, and they're very skeptical. So you want to make sure you address those items and just go in there with an open heart and an open mind. And if the advisor does a good job in making you understand and showing that you're important and you need to be part of that relationship and part of those meetings and the ongoing meetings, then they're the right person for you.
Yeah, and I think that's all great advice. I know I faced the same situation when I told my husband we are going to go see an advisor, right? I told him and he said, no, that's what you do. And I don't want to be part of it. I don't have any interest in investing. I don't have any interest in this. And so the way I got him to see my advisor was by using the old adage of the talking stick. So a lot of times I think my husband, because he does give me so much leeway into making those decisions, he feels like he doesn't have a voice. And so I said to him, like, here's an hour uninterrupted by me giving an opinion for you to really hold the talking stick and talk about what's important to you today and in our future, and how you feel money and investing plays a part in that. And I think once I framed it to him that way, that it wasn't about, she wasn't going to sit there and talk about Sharpe ratios and alpha and all of that, that she really just wanted to understand what this money is going to fuel for us. What do we want it to do? He was on board when he got to sit down and spend an hour talking about the charities that matter most to him and how he wants to make sure that we are able to contribute to those charities. He lit up. So I would say for you, Greg, that's out there with your partner, like, let them know it's an hour for them to talk about them. And sometimes that's just what it takes.
Nicole, you hit the nail right on the head. I think one of the main things in again, I'm a little bit different and every advisor is different, but in that initial meeting, I discover those items, the hot buttons, and then I also make those the spouse that's maybe doesn't want to be there understand that I'm a neutral third party and I'm going to help a lot of the times, because there's things that when you ask the question, what are your financial goals? It's very rare that both spouses have all the same exact goals and prioritize them as well. So I'm a good balancing act there, and I can help them juggle those conversations as well as find out what's important to them when the other spouse had never asked them that.
And I love that you're keeping it 100, Nicole, on here.
That's right.
That we're being real here on the Ally YouTube channel overall. So with that said, I think this has been, I don't know if it's necessarily a debate. I kind of lay down a little bit by saying, I really think that there's a place for both DIY investors and also financial advisors.